This is the Made for Living Well podcast, hosted by Alexa Sherm, the place to create a life well lived.
Welcome back to the podcast and welcome to a new year. I know that it's so cliche to be like, oh, it's a new year and all the best things are happening and it's a new chapter and a new you and whatever you want to do with all of that. I still think the new year is a great time for reflection, a great time to get excited about what could be and maybe starting to shift the patterns. It's just a great time of awareness. And so I'm kind of all about the new year, although I think that we should do this kind of every month in micro doses of just really analyzing our life and our health and really just making sure that the actions that we're taking are going somewhere. Now, I've spent a while considering what are some things that I really want you to know and how can I best help you this year? And I don't take those conversations lightly. And I really do spend a lot of time kind of pondering the health space. And like, we've talked about this, we've been here, we've been in it, some of us our entire lives. And I just realized that can be really frustrating to think, am I making progress or am I not? And so this year, I really, really, really want to help you make forward progress and to really simplify health down into a way that is not only understandable, but practical and also positive, which I'm kind of calling this year like the No Bad News Health podcast, because I think so much of health has really been taught to you in an unhealthy way, which is perpetrating unhealth rather than helping you get healthy. And I think that's really important to stop and note, so I'm going to say it again. I think so much of the health space has been spoken in a way that is so negative that alone is unhealthy, which is perpetrating unhealth more than it's helping you to become healthy. And I say this as we're going to talk about this today, like we really do have to change the system of health because your body is truly not the problem. You are not the problem. There is a larger problem at play, and that is truly the system or the approach that we're coming from. And a lot of times it's just the negative cycles of health that focus solely on your problems. Now, I heard a great quote last year, and I think I shared it in the previous podcast, just kind of summarizing last year and where I want to go this year. And it was this idea that people will never get out of debt by focusing on debt reduction alone. Because as long as we cycle through debt, we'll kind of always be stuck in debt. Like where we focus is what we give energy to, and that's what grows. The same thing, and I think some big issues in the health space is our fixation on sickness, on symptoms, on problems, on disease, on weight. And yes, we do have a world of problems in those areas, but constantly focusing on them and them alone or making them the main focus of change is only allowing those problems to continue to exist. Or even if they get fixed, quote unquote fixed, generally speaking, most people run right back into them. And that's why we have to start focusing on wellness. We have to start to see the other side, to put more emphasis on the solution. And today on the podcast, I'm going to share just some new ideas or new thoughts or a new way to approach health that I think merges what everyone is trying to do, but in a positive way, right? Like no bad news here. We're really going to take this in a positive direction to expand our understanding so that we can expand into health. Now, that's a super long introduction and some hopefully helpful information already, but I just want to remind you that in addition to this podcast, I am diving deeper into this topic over in my weekly newsletter. It's called The Weekly Fill. I think it's an amazing place. It's on Substack. So if you know anything about Substack, it's more like a community than just an email that comes to your inbox. Like you can comment, we can have conversation. And that's what I love so much about it. Now, coming up in just a couple of weeks, we are launching the very first class on Substack that is going to talk about specifically about the system of weight loss. And whether you're trying to lose weight or not, I think it gives a good understanding of how the body works so that we can either maintain a healthy weight or reach a healthy weight. And I promise this is not like your traditional approach to health, and it's going to follow along, or you're going to get some hints about this inside this podcast and next week's podcast. But these podcasts are really going to kind of fall in line into some kind of order that just, again, expands health, helps you to truly start to live it instead of being so consumed with it. So if you're not on the weekly fill, if you haven't signed up, head on over to thelivingwell.com and get signed up for the weekly fill. It's absolutely free. Although the classes, there is an additional subscription, which I think is really worth it. And this month only, we are offering the lowest price of the entire year. You can get a full year subscription for only $5 a month. Like literally just one coffee a month is all it takes to get all of these live classes that we're going to really break down weight loss and achieving a healthy weight and really helping you to break free from even healing to moving into just living, because you're already living and existing in that healed state, because you've created a lifestyle of health. It's the year of wellness. I am just calling it like it is the year of wellness, and there's big things in store for that. So with that being said, I really want to create like a bigger vision for what health is inside today's podcast and just lay a foundation. Because I think a lot of the times, again, what is wrong in the health space is not your body. Your body and your desires for health are not the problem. We stay there because we're constantly reminded that the systems of our body are alerting us, right? The symptoms that they're creating are a problem. But they're really a sign. They're an indicator of our overall functioning of health. And they're an indicator of how our body is responding to the system at play. If you hear me say nothing else, I think the most important and the most overlooked aspect of health is one, your body is never the problem. It's always working for your benefit and on your behalf. But health is really a metric, or your outcomes, a metric of how your body responds to the things that you do. It's how your body's responding to life. How you live is just a representation of how your body is interpreting and communicating life back to you. Like there is a language of your body. And you might not like that language, and that is totally fine. I think many people find themselves here. I think throughout periods of life, we'll find ourselves in spaces where we just don't like the story our body is telling. Like we don't like this space, whether it's extra weight or the symptoms. Like it's fair to say that those things aren't always comfortable or pleasant or even healthy. But the way to change them is not to just fix it or try to alter it through all these outside lifestyles, but it's really understanding, why is my body responding this way? And what does it need to shift that into a healthier response? So my motto in health is always, how can you support your body rather than just try to hack it to change it? Your body is looking for support. And what we have to see is that we truly do have a health crisis on our hands. Like there is no denying it, that no matter what we've done in the health space, it seems like unhealth just kind of continuously blooms. I'm not going to stay there because I'm devoting this year to the No Bad News Health podcast. But I think it is good to just be aware that maybe the way that we've approached health isn't working. And I know I've said this for a while, and it's just like, okay, but how can I help you do something different? How can you use that information to transform your system so that your body responds appropriately? And when it comes to this, I think one big thing that I've been really pondering and thinking about is like, we have two extremes in this space. We have the extreme of like, trying to fix our body and lose weight and get rid of symptoms. And we're just like so focused kind of on the problem and we're in fix it mode. And then we also have the other extreme, which is like, I'm just going to love my body at any size, like the surrender to your health. Like just be content, just be happy here. And I honestly don't think either side of that is wrong. I think what's wrong about it is that they're opposing each other rather than supporting each other. And I think when it comes to health, we have to see that both of those can be good and can coexist. You can like yourself where you are, you can love yourself where you are, and still want to change. And I think it's healthy to want to become healthier. I think it's good. I think it's our desire and our intent, and it's our biological goal with life is to be healthy so that we can go out and live life. Now, of course, the biggest goal would be that we should not live for health, but use health to live. And that comes back to getting our body at a place where it can stop being so consumed with itself, which means we have to lessen the symptoms. We have to change the story our body is telling so that you have the energy to focus on all these outside things, focus on really living. And there is a process and a system to that. But again, it starts with recognizing and changing the story of health that says your body is not the problem. And also, you did not get here on purpose. And that's also to say that you didn't necessarily choose this path for you. And I think you need to give yourself some grace in this season and some respect to your biology. And this is not always easy. Like, trust me, I had to do this too, of recognizing your body did not do this to make your life miserable. Like, you did not gain weight without a reason. And that reason was not bad, but it was good. It might not be healthy, but it was necessary. I think this is a really big point that we have to understand about our biology in order to really shift the system. Is that your body does nothing without a purpose. There is always a reason involved. And I think about this in every spectrum of health and life, even the things that people call bad, right? Like addictions. Like addiction is not healthy. It's not good, but it's also not something that people choose to walk themselves into. I think we get there because we miss the basic foundations and the system that is required to live healthy. And that always comes back to two big things: safety and energy. And you could even throw time in there. Like, these are the biggest aspects of health that we have to understand. The purpose of your biology is to keep you alive. The goal is to help you thrive. But even when we zoom all the way into our cellular health, what we know is that the body is designed to work together into this system where every cell communicates with every other cell, and it's working in this community, this cohesion, this harmony. That is health at the fullest. And when you get there, like, there's no compensation. Everything is working well, and you're feeling that. Like, the story your body lives out is a story of health. It's a story of vibrancy, of energy, and that generally comes out in the form of people living their purpose and their passions. However, when that system becomes disrupted, whether because you don't have enough energy, you're feeling unsafe, you're trying to do things too quickly, or you're not doing anything at all, you're kind of trying to mess with time, what happens then is that you put a threat on your biology. Something shifts inside of you that says your body is no longer safe and you don't have the resources to handle life. And that leads to compensation. Now, compensation can happen in the short term too, and that's generally a really good thing. Again, these processes of survival are not bad. Cortisol is not bad. Estrogen is not bad. Insulin is not bad. All of these bodily processes that we hear in life are not the problem. The problem is, why is our body staying stuck there in prolonged and consistent periods and pulling them into the extreme? Like, why is our body feeling the need to do that? And if we can get there to that root cause of why is it causing my body to respond this way, then we can change the entire system because it's really all working together. And your bodily system is not working alone. It's working directly with your mind and your soul to really, again, be the judge of how are you going to live? What is the story your body's going to tell? What is the action you're going to take? And what are the outcomes you're going to develop? Now, to your biology, again, survival is of utmost importance. So when, in prolonged periods, your safety metrics become threatened, or maybe better said, when the burden becomes greater than the resources you have available, your body is going to shift into this compensation mode. And that compensation mode, or you could call it metabolic adaptation. I'm going to talk a lot about metabolism here because I think it really is the system or the circuit board that kind of determines where energy is going and how it's used. But this metabolic adaptation is used in order to make sure that the most critical processes of your body have the energy you need so that you can survive, while shutting down and turning off or redirecting the energy from unnecessary or unlife-saving processes of the body. So it really just forces the cells to compensate to function in a way of survival, not necessarily thriving. And that's why when we look at stress patterns, or when the body, which is really when the body enters into like prolonged survival patterns, you're going to see that digestion falls by the wayside. Like your body literally will break down cells inside your digestive tract, quote unquote, leaky gut, which is why so many people struggle with gut health problems. But it will slow digestion, break down those cells for energy, because ultimately in the form of survival, your body doesn't necessarily want to do the work of breaking down energy. Now, this can be really good, right? Like if you're out working and moving, or you're going to run or do a workout, having a lot of food in your stomach, is a detriment. It makes you feel more sluggish. Sometimes it can lead to your body just wanting to get rid of the contents in your digestive tract altogether. Now, of course, that's not necessarily wrong. That can help you because then it redirects that energy from your digestive processes, your digestive tract, into your extremities so that you can do the physical activity or the physical labor required. The problem isn't ever in the short term. These processes of survival are really healthy. In fact, stressing the body is a really good thing. Your body was designed for it, and it builds resiliency. Problems exist because we stay there for prolonged periods. What's even worse, though, is that our health practices, or what's been considered healthy, is actually pushing our body into these survival states. And this is where so much confusion happens inside your mind, inside your body, of like, I'm doing these things because I thought they were healthy, but I'm feeling worse, or I'm getting worse, or I'm gaining weight. You probably won't notice it right away because in the quick moment of survival, in the short term, it's going to look like results. But over the long haul, that compensation of your body, of shifting your energy, shifting the circuit board to only turn on the most vital functions of your body while shutting down the others, are going to lead to results that you do not want to see. It's going to lead to unhealth. And I think this is why we have entered into the body love movement, or love at any size, where we really just have this fat acceptance. And again, I'm not here to say that shame or the other end of the spectrum is good. But what I want you to see is that I think sometimes we just settle, not because we want to settle, or not even because that's where we feel our best, but because of the overwhelm and the confusion and the chaos that is happening inside of us is so great that we're literally entering into this freeze mode of health, of like, I don't even understand. And so my best case scenario is just to not even care. And I don't want to say not even care, but like, I just can't, right? Like, I just don't even want to. Like, there's no more desire left because I've done it. I've tried it. I've not succeeded at it, or at least not long term. And now I'm just like, I'm so done with it. Like, it's almost become its own form of trauma. And this is a really dangerous place to get and to live and to exist within. And I fear this is a place that so much of our world is in, is that health has become its own trauma. And now we're just victim of our bodies, and we've just surrendered to the victimhood, which just keeps us stuck. And while I also feel like I went through this phase on my own of quitting health and just kind of full on revolting to it, like it was its own form of survival in a way of like, I'm just going to quit because I'm so overwhelmed by it. You can see the same thing happening in relationships and marriages of like, I just can't anymore, right? Like I just can't. And so we run, or we try to escape it, or we just go numb to it. And while that also is a form of protection, again, you don't necessarily choose it, but that's what you must do in order to survive in those moments. It's not healthy, it's necessary. But what I think is the best gift of all is that just because we've been there or we are there doesn't mean we have to stay there. Like, it's okay that we were there and we can respect the process, but we don't have to stay stuck in those patterns. I think one of the greatest gifts of our entire biology is that nothing is forever. And that what can be patterned can be repatterned. It's so fascinating for me to think, especially as we kind of downplay aging, but even as we age, our brain patterns still have the ability to be repatterned at any age. I know there's a saying you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but that's just because we're living in survival. The reality is that you can learn new things at any point in life. The kicker is that you have to have the resources available in order to do so. And I think this is really important to take note of. Is that I think a lot of us are living in these places of survival, or maybe not even caring, or forcing our body into the extreme because we really do want to feel better. And I think the reason you can't feel better is not because your body is wrong, or not because you've done something wrong, but it's because the burden of life is greater than the resources you have available for life. I'm going to show you a graph of this over at the Living Well because I think it will make more sense to see it. But it's essentially saying there's always going to be a burden to life, right? There's always going to be things that are negatively impacting your energy and your safety. And I think common day thought is, let's just avoid those. Let's just overprotect, or let's just eliminate. Let's just restrict. And yeah, you might need to do less or restrict a little bit more in the period of survival when your body's I'm so overwhelmed. Sometimes it's good to reduce or eliminate for those periods of time. But I think that has become the picture of health. And it's not, or the answer to health, and it's not. This idea that restriction or deprivation or starvation, or really the shrinking of your livelihood in order to generate more energy and safety, in the end, doesn't produce what anyone is ever looking for. Let me explain this. There's this overarching idea in the health space that the problem with health is something to do with our food system, right? And don't get me wrong, there's a lot wrong with our food system. But when we over-villainize food, especially healthy food, right? Whether it's a macronutrient or whether it's a group of foods, people have gone through this idea that nuts and seeds are bad and vegetables are bad, or raw vegetables are bad. And yes, there is a time when even healthy things can turn bad or can react poorly inside the body. That is not because they're bad, but it's because of either the amount that's being consumed, whether too few or too much, like water, for instance, right? Water is great. It's healing, it's necessary, it's required, but over drinking water can be just as harmful as not drinking water at all. There is a balance to all of this. The same thing goes with food. That's why we cannot villainize food, because doing so makes it feel like the system of what you consume is the problem, when really the reason why you might be reacting to that food right now is not necessarily because that food is bad, but because your body's burden is greater than the resources you have available to deal with this. We're going to talk about this in a coming podcast, but it's essentially saying that the healthiest things for us are those that produce energy, even though the work or the process of consumption of those things takes energy. So everything you consume takes energy. It takes work to digest food. Let's go back to vegetables, for instance. Vegetables are obviously really great for our body. They contain so much nutrients. So villainizing something like that becomes a dangerous scope, even though in the short term, those vegetables, specifically raw vegetables, might actually be really hard on your body. And the reason they're hard on your body is not because the food itself is bad, but because your body doesn't have the energy available, the resources to properly digest that food, to absorb it and to use it. Like the energy it takes to break down that food and use that food is greater than the return on energy on the other side. Now, we're not always necessarily needing that quick return because on some level, energy is in abundance. But when we're living in compensation mode, the energy lack is really going to be a driving force of how the body responds. And that's why it can respond poorly to even some of the best things for you. But the goal with health is not to say like, okay, well, that food is bad and I'm just going to eliminate that. Or get into patterns where it's like, I literally can't eat anything. And I've seen this before with clients where they will come and they will say, I literally react to everything. And we'll even do a food sensitivity panel and they are reacting to literally everything. And I want people to know that the idea is that while you might be in this state for a period of time, you do not have to stay here. You should not stay here. And the goal of health is to get out of here so you can build resilience. So you can not only handle the best things of life, but you can also handle some of the unhealthy things of life without responding negatively to those things. And it goes back to the equation of the burden and the resources. If the burden on your body, if the stress on your body is greater than the resources you have available, you will react probably negatively, even if it's the healthiest thing. And again, we're going to get into this more later on because I really want to keep these podcasts in an appropriate length. But what I'm trying to say is, like, again, it's not necessarily the things that you're doing. And the idea with health cannot continuously be from less because that generally creates the scarcity mindset. Not to mention kind of that forbidden fruit phenomenon where like if you tell yourself you can't have it, you're probably going to want it. That's what restriction does. It creates this sense of survival and deep need, and it often leads to these addictions. Why? Not because you want to, but because your body is looking for safety and energy wherever it can get it in the fastest possible approach. And I will tell you that those convenience foods, that bowl of cereal, that bag of chips, while not healthy, is providing for a lot of people a quick hit of safety and energy. And in survival, that is the only thing that matters. And so when it comes to getting healthy, again, it's recognizing why these patterns exist, having some grace for them, but also recognizing health is not in less, but it's often in more. And when you feel like you're getting into the space kind of falling for the less patterns, that's generally just a sign that your safety and energy is lacking. Like I think we get here and we're like, okay, we can't handle decisions. We need to make less decisions. We need to have less color. We need to have less food. We need to take less risk. We need to isolate. We need to slow down. Like we can't wait anymore, right? Like we're kind of living in this convenience-paced life. And that's just a sign of our bodies are just overwhelmed. The burden is greater than the resources. And really, at the end of the day, we've lost our capacity to do the things that are really important to live the most fulfilling life, like being able to wait, making decisions, taking risks, living and seeing life in color, like getting outside of yourself. That never comes from less, but it always comes from more. It comes from the idea of expansion. We need to expand our energy. We need to expand our resources. We need to expand our nourishment so that we can expand our life. And I promise you, as much as the world has told you restriction is the answer to cut back, it's really about more. Now, there's a lot of nuance here because we're going to talk about weight loss specifically in an upcoming class that I have that I think you're going to really find fascinating. How do you expand health in order to lose weight? Because there is an aspect of sometimes you have to cut back, cut some calories out in order to lose fat mass. But that happens because you've expanded the caloric intake initially. That might make no sense now. I promise it will make all the sense in the world inside that class and as we start to talk about metabolism. But I fear that as long as we continue to live in this restrictive approach to health, we are really going to miss it. Like we're always going to stay stuck here whether chasing the next best thing or just giving up altogether. And I don't think either one of those is right, because I think at the end of the day, inside every single human is a desire for health. Now, health doesn't necessarily mean skinny. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But I think it's also fair to say that many people are living at unhealthy weight, and that unhealthy weight is not unhealthy because of body fat alone, but because of the other protective mechanisms like extra water and swelling and fluid, like edema, that comes into play because of the extra fat. And I don't say that to hurt anyone or to shame anyone or to get all politically about what is the right size. Again, I think a healthy or an optimal weight for people is really going to vary. And it's also going to be very seasonal. Like, your weight will change throughout the seasons and the decades of your life. It will flux. And that's good. That's necessary. That's why when we come to health, I've created like 5 really big points that I think we really have to like reflect on and start to understand as we move forward into this path of expanding health and really increasing our resources while maybe decreasing the burden, but also not worrying about the burden on the body as much as we worry about the resources. And I want to be really clear about that. The approach to health that I want to help you take this year is not necessarily being so overwhelmed by the burden on the body, because we know that our bodies are actually designed to be really resilient, to handle a great burden on the body. Like, even take pregnancy, for instance. Like, I know you wouldn't call that a burden, but that is, the amount of nutrients and energy and resources and just growth that happens to create another human. That truly is one of the greatest moments of burden on a woman's body. It creates a great outcome. And that's why I don't always think that we should look at these burdens as unhealthy. They can be. Pregnancy can be incredibly unhealthy or lead to unhealth in so many women. Like, postpartum depression is skyrocketing. And it's because, again, not necessarily because of the burden or that we shouldn't bear children, but because we don't have the resources to be able to handle that and to come back from that burden. And if we can start to understand this, if we can start to see that, yes, maybe some of it is reducing the burden on the body, but also recognizing there's so many burdens in life that we can't control. Like, let's stop putting all of our energy into things that really are outside of our control. And let's just start putting our energy into things that we have control over. And the things that we have control over are the things that we do. And if we can approach this from an expansion perspective of what can I add to my life? How can I add safety? How can I add energy? How can I add the resources my body needs to thrive? I think things change. Because then it's not so much results-based. Results and needing results is really a process of living in survival. Like, it's a process of hope that people cling to in order to maintain survival. But when we can get outside of that, we can see that, yes, we all want to change. We all want to become healthier. But it's not just living for the results, but it's recognizing that the smallest things create the immediate results. Maybe not the things that we have thought about and hoped for, but we have to trust that those will come if we do the immediate action to provide the resources for our body. And what do I mean by that? Like, we all know that it takes time to lose weight. And I think time is a critical factor in the health picture. Things take time. Slow is often better because your body has to adjust. It takes time for your metabolism to adjust. It's called metabolic adaptation. It's always adjusting, but it takes time to fully see the results of that. Your body does not want to be rushed because rushed feels unsafe, especially initially. But over time, as you build more resources, the results happen faster. That's why I kind of love this quote that says, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Like, if you can just get into the process of building resources, like building a snowball, eventually it becomes bigger and it moves faster the bigger it becomes. It's the expansion that happens and creates faster results, or the results that you want to see. But we cannot dismiss that anytime you take a step of healthy action, anytime you do something in support of your body, it is producing an immediate result. Drinking a glass of water has an immediate result. Getting outside, even for a couple of minutes of sunlight, has immediate results. Eating a healthy meal has an immediate result. You might not see it externally, but internally, it is changing your body. So we have to see and start to change our view of these things and recognize that if we can start to support the body, if we can increase the resources, we will see massive changes. Now, the 5 big things that I think are really important as we move into this year and understanding health is 1, first of all, your body is trustworthy. I think we really have to start to understand and maybe even do some more of our own research about how is your body for you. And if we can get beyond the outcomes as a failure of our body systems, what if you could start to see those and shift those into seeing how that was a protection of your body system? Like, how did your body protect you in these moments? How was it helping you? And that's really hard to see if you have disease processes going on. And I want you to know your body never wants to get there. It doesn't. But where was your body forced to compensate? And where was it lacking energy? And what might have been happening in your life that was taking all of that energy? Where was the burden greater than the resources? And then you can start to have some compassion for your body. And in the process of that, hopefully start to trust that your body will do the best thing, the thing that it needs, if you provide the resources for it to do those things. If you provide the resources to help it get out of compensation, it will start to change. So we have to trust that in the process of expansion, your body will do the best thing that it needs. It will heal in the ways it needs to heal, and the results will come. But of course, that takes body awareness. The second thing that we have to understand is that health requires action. It requires movement. Energy is generated through motion. We have to do something in order to help our body. So just sitting back and expecting it to change won't happen. It's going to take work, but that work should create greater outcomes. And that's why we have to pay attention, because not all of the healthy things will help our body at this moment. But the third thing is there's a lot of flexibility to health. Like, we have to have some kind of body awareness to recognize that just because something's not sitting well with me now, or just because it doesn't feel like it's helpful now, doesn't mean it's unhealthy forever. And I think this is really true for where a lot of people stand. Is like, you might have a season where eating a lot of raw vegetables isn't healthy for you, or doing cardio isn't healthy for you. But that doesn't mean it's not healthy forever. It's just a season as your body heals. So we have to see some flexibility and experimentation with our body to be like, okay, it can respond negatively. That's okay. I just need to adjust based on those things. And then 4, reiterating the expansion of health, like to see the bigger picture. How can I help it? How can I do more things that provide energy? That might be more space. Maybe instead of worrying about all the things on your schedule, you just focus on creating more space within your schedule. Like, instead of focusing on reducing calories, maybe you focus on consuming more of the right calories. I think almost anything that we think is less or restriction or reducing or eliminating can be really twisted into, but how can it provide more for me? Like, how can I do something different in the scope of expanding it? We're going to get into a lot of this when we talk about energy with energy drains and energy gains. But I think it's really important to start to see that health is not the reduction, it's the expansion. And I just want you to start to think about that and brainstorm what that might look like and how that might shift your view. And then the 5th thing is this has to be done at a healthy pace. And the pace for you is going to be different than the pace for someone else. And what your body needs today is going to be different from someone else. And that's why we'll never see that there's ever a very detailed system that works for everyone, because everyone's body is going to respond no matter how healthy it is. This is why I also think it's really difficult to use research to plot against different diets, because I really think it's the quote unquote diet space that's wrong. I think what's wrong about the diet space is not all of the great research that most diets have. It's how is that translated into a particular body that's acting and functioning very different from the next body. Really, I think this is why most of health hasn't worked, is because there's no personal side of health. Like, we haven't related these healthy practices and understood them in a personal way. And recognizing that this might be healthy, but I might have to work myself into it in order to make it be healthy for me. And that comes back to, we have to trust the timing of the body. We have to work with the timing of the body and recognize that fast often works against scarcity mechanisms. That's why the quick fix rarely works, is because fast often pushes the body outside of the place of stress and into the extreme. Most of health is going to happen slowly. Slow changes, slow shifts, slow rhythms, slow living. And that doesn't necessarily mean not doing anything. It just means doing and making changes slowly so that your body has time to adjust. You have time to be aware of if the adjustment is working, and you create that flexibility inside your body to respond in a positive way. My hopes this year is that I can teach you how to expand your health so that you can start living it out. And not just living health, but using health to live your life. Healing is not hard. It is not based on any kind of race, sex, socioeconomic status. It's really not even based on your genetics. We all have the ability to heal. It is just working with your body by understanding how your body works so that you can support it and provide the resources it needs to fully thrive. Again, this is not hard, but it really does take all of your life. Like, health is not just about your diet. It's not just about your exercise patterns. It is literally your entire life. And I think when we start to shift our view and our focus from things that we don't really have that much control over to the things that we do, we can really start to generate health in a new way and really just generate our lives in a different way. I think this stuff is really exciting. I hope you're excited. I know sometimes listening to this is like drinking from a fire hose. So make sure you head on over to the Living Well and sign up for the weekly fill, where I give you more help as we dive into this together. Also, if you want to specifically talk about weight loss and getting to a healthy weight, maybe even if you're at a healthy weight, how the process of weight works inside the body, I'm going to show this through the idea of expansion and how and why your body stores weight and loses weight in an upcoming class that I have. I'm going to link that up in the show notes. So just wherever you're listening, in the description, there's going to be a link to get into that class. Again, it's part of the subscription for the weekly fill. You can pay for the entire year in advance, which is only $5 a month, or for the single class is $7. Totally worth your time, in my opinion. That's going to expand a little bit more in depth into weight loss specifically than we're going to get into this podcast. But next week, we're going to talk about change and maybe why we haven't changed and how we do change in the next podcast, which has to do with creating the capacity to change through the resources required to change. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I would love it if you shared this with your friends and family. I'm going to be honest, I'm not always great at promoting myself and promoting this podcast, but it really does mean the world to me when you can help share this with other people. If you have friends who are into health, are interested in a unique side of health, kind of changing the approach to health, getting to the root cause and really relearning to nourish your body, or who are interested in the mind-body connection, like that is truly my passion. And we're going to get into a lot of that here in the podcast, as we have in the past. I would love it if you would share this with them. Take a screenshot of it, send them a link, ask them to join you this year and diving into these podcasts and then hopefully having conversations about it. The conversation on the backside is often where the most change happens. And so building those communities can really make a world of difference. You could also leave a rating and review. That helps, again, the podcast be shared with more people without you having to share it yourself. So share it with your friends and family, leave a rating and a review, and then come back next week as you join me in another podcast talking about creating the capacity for change and even for learning new information. You guys are the best. I will see you back here